It's Rachel Hala. Hello, everyone. I'm Peter Underwood, and I'm one of your co-hosts for today. And this is Maureen.
Hi, so I'm your other co-host, Maureen. And thank you for joining us today. I am very excited and thankful to be casting to you live today from the territory of the Kwakwaka'wakw First Nations here in northern Vancouver Island. And Peter?
I'm casting from the South Islands, Wasanich, and the Kwanghan territory, my home territory of Wasanich. It's good to have you all here.
Yeah, so we are super excited to have everybody join us, and we'd love to hear where everybody is joining from as well. So we were really fortunate last session to have people from all over the country and even across the globe. And so we are always interested in who's joining us today. So if you are joining us live, please share in the chat box where you're joining from. And if you know the territory or different names of where you're from, we want to hear all of that. So please share with us right now that information. And right now, I'm going to welcome all of our live class attendees who are in the virtual broadcast studio right now. And so each session, we reserve a limited number of spots for classrooms that want to join directly into our program and interact with the hosts and with our guests. So if you're interested and want to join next time, we still have spots available for our remaining sessions. You can visit our website here at raincoast.org/coastal institute and register for that for a live spot. So as you are sharing where you're from, I'm going to introduce some of these classrooms here first. So I'm going to add Claremont School here. So hello, can you guys share with us where you're from or what school?
Okay. Hi, my name is Jordan. We are the Institute for Global Solutions here on the traditional territory of the Wasanich and the Lakota people. We are a class of both grade 11s and 12s with a focus on environmental studies and global solutions.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining today. And then I'm going to go next to our next school, Pearson College. I'm going to add you guys right here. I'll say a quick hello.
Okay, so before we introduce ourselves, we would like to acknowledge that we speak to you today from the unceded territory of the Shianu Beecher Bay First Nation. We are grateful to study and live on this land as students of Pearson College.
We are part of the UWC movement, the United World College movement, which is a movement of schools across the globe that uses education as a force to unite people, nations, and culture for peace and a sustainable future. I'm Catherine from Quebec. I'm in grade 12.
I'm Magnus from Norway, also in grade 12. And we would like to extend our thanks to the two hosts, Maureen and Peter, today. Also, we would like to extend our thanks to the two guest speakers, Elder Robert Marshall and Dr. Andrea Reid, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us.
We, as well as the whole entire grade 11 cohort watching from YouTube from our school auditorium, are very grateful to be watching this webinar, and we look forward to watching it. Merci.
Tusen takk.
So I'm Wasanich on my mom's side, but I'm Norwegian on Wasanich on my dad's side, but I'm Norwegian on my mom's side too. So it's nice to see another Norwegian.
Very international, yeah. Thank you, welcome. Yeah, what a beautiful introduction. Grateful for you to be here today as well. So I'm gonna go to Miss Sherwood's class.
Hello, we are coming to you from the Coast Salish nations of Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish. They're unceded territories. We are a grade 3-4 class, and happy Pink Shirt Day.
Happy Pink Shirt Day, yeah.
For sure. Awesome, thank you, welcome. And last but not least, our last class, we have Miss Saxby Jones' class. I'm gonna add you right here. Hi. Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. There we go. Hello. We are coming from the traditional territory of the Comox First Nation, and we are a 6-7 class. 6-7 class.
Awesome.
Good to see you all.
Good to see you. Thank you. Yeah, I love seeing all the different classrooms from all over and such different age groups as well. But yeah, thank you for joining us for session 2 in this series. And so this whole series, Coastal Insights, Eyes on the Coast, is focused on really connecting people to the lands, waters, and wildlife of coastal British Columbia, its conservation issues, and approaching that using a guiding principle called this two-eyed seeing, which we'll be focusing on today. And so we introduced a little bit about it in last session, but we'll be delving a little bit more into it today. And so if you joined us last session, we had a learning session, and each of our sessions are alternating between having a lesson and then what we call a spotlight session. So today's session is a spotlight session where we invite really fascinating guests and speakers that can share their knowledge on the topics that we are discussing. So I'm going to pass it on to Peter to share a little bit more about today's topic and introduce our first guest.
Okay, I do want to shout out to some of the people listening from online and tuning in. We got some nice hellos from Scotland and from some schools, the Pacific School of Innovation and Inquiry. We have some folks tuning in from Olympia, Washington, Algonquin Territory, not too far, right here at Parkland Secondary, and I think also Parkland Secondary from Sydney, Saanich Territory there. Hello from Montreal and Coquitlam. Flot, hi from Finnish Girl in Italy. Also Friday Harbor. We have Aloha from Honolulu.
Wow.
And yeah, quite a few more. It's good to see everyone, and thanks for chiming in where you're from. But yeah, today's session is we're going to be having 2 guest speakers. We have a topic today. Today's topic is why blending Indigenous and Western knowledge systems is vital to inform and fuel conservation. So if you tuned in last time, you know that we talked a little bit about two-eyed seeing. And two-eyed seeing is a concept termed by Mi'kmaq Elder Albert Marshall, who is joining us today. The concept is kind of taking the strengths of Indigenous knowledge and the strengths of Western knowledge and learning with both of them, using both your eyes to benefit your whole learning experience. So that means like the strengths of Indigenous knowledge, meaning like the knowledge of history and the land and values of Indigenous peoples, along with strengths of Western knowledge and like their methods of sciences, and really kind of blending them to get the full experience of learning. So yeah, a little bit about Albert. Albert's a Mi'kmaq elder living in Unama'ki, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq. I hope I'm saying that right. Please correct me if I'm wrong. He has worked passionately for a very long time to promote cross-cultural understandings, reconciliation, and healing. He is an advisor to and is highly regarded as a spokesperson for the Mi'kmaq natural resources and environmental issues. He is the creator of the concept two-eyed seeing, which draws the strengths of traditional Indigenous knowledge and contemporary science in tandem to approach learning and understanding. So let's welcome our Elder Albert Marshall.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, hello.
You know, we got somehow disconnected momentarily.
Oh, okay.
And but it was somehow we got back in again.
Oh, good.
So somebody's working with us or against us. I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway, if I'm on, and the students are the audiences, right?
Sorry?
The students are the audience, is it?
Yeah, the audience is tuning in from Facebook and YouTube live right now.
Okay, well, anyway, my name is Albert Marshall. and I am a Mi'kmaq, and my clan is the Moose, and I am from Mi'kmaq, but I do reside in the community called Eskisoni, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. I have been homeschooled, and my classroom was our natural world outside. Therefore, I don't have any academic background other than to say I have and I am just a student of life. And we have now for a while have introduced this concept of Edwaptamuk or Tuwaisin. Tuwaisin is very much, I believe, inherent to Aboriginal ways of thinking, in which you look at everything from another perspective. In our case, as an Aboriginal person, with one lens, this is what I see, and I hear everything from my Aboriginal understanding and from my Aboriginal perspective. And since now we have to be coexisting with others, I use the other lens and try to invoke that lens constantly and see what other perspectives can I embrace or see to enhance my opportunities of being able to meet the challenges that I might be facing, especially when I deal with my natural world, because our natural world is such a complex system that is going to require very multiple perspectives to be able to address the issues that needs to be addressed. And for an Aboriginal way of thinking, it's much easier because we do not see ourselves as separate from nature, but rather being part of nature. And once you embrace that concept, then you know exactly what your responsibilities are. And part of that responsibility is to daily remind yourself that I am not a superior being here, but rather I'm just a very small part and parcel of this wonderful creation. But unlike any other species or creature, I have something that they don't have, and that's the cognitive mind. And with this cognitive mind, I believe it has done wonders, and it also has created challenges, such as when we look at the current state of our environment, I believe it was this cognitive mind that got us into where we are now. Because with that cognitive mind, we managed to harness that gift of science, and which science has brought forth a lot of these wonderful conveniences that we have. But sadly, though, this science has only been used so that humans become a number one exploiters, exploiting nature in every which way, without considering that this is a living entity. And like any other living entity, it needs to be loved, appreciated, and respected. And it is not a commodity, but it is rather a source of our dependence for her, in which daily we remind ourselves how interconnected and interdependent we are, and that everything from her we solely depend upon her for our existence, especially air, water, and soil. And for some reason, we have allowed others to compromise the very essence or the very web of life in which we all depend upon. In which today, I believe I can comfortably say, we have exhausted the carrying capacity of our system. And we have exhausted the cleansing capacity of our system. The rate of extraction is so fast that she cannot regenerate herself anymore. The injection of contaminants into the air, water, and soil are so vast and so fast that she cannot clean herself. So she's now at the mercy in our hands. But yet, here we have something that is a wonderful tool or energy we have, and that's science. Well, let's transform that science and energy, not just to be the arm of destruction, but rather transform it also could be the arm of renewal, the arm of mitigation. And this arm now will become the arm of renewal instead of the arm of destruction. I think we have that capacity. Not only do we need a political will, but we also have to take it upon ourselves as allowing that to be part and parcel of our consciousness. Because it's through this consciousness that these messages somehow will resonate to where it needs to be. That's to the governments and to the industries. Because obviously they only have one thing in mind, and that is for each and every one of us to play a role of being helpful for them as to how they can maximize their profits or their efforts and not consider the repercussion or the consequences that we people on the ground level will be suffering. Poverty, illness, etc. And I believe we do, as an Aboriginal people, look upon the current situation we're in at this point, and that is COVID-19. We believe this virus could have just as easily wiped out humanity, but it didn't. So we take that to mean it's a warning that was sent. And the onus is on us to do some reflection. And in that reflection, we have a choice. We have an alternative. And one choice we have is it's going to be business as usual and continuously rape and compromise the integrity of our very source of life? Or are we going to seriously look and reflect and see where we come from and how we got here and at what expense have we created to the very source of life in which we all depend upon, especially the clean air, clean drinking water, and the fertile soil? So these are the kind of reflections, I believe, that we should somehow come together and agree that there is a great need for a transformative change. Well, let's look at that, what that should look like, and start building an alternative so that the rate of destruction would be somehow addressed and try to alleviate as much as possible of not allowing us to get to the point of no return. Many years ago, we developed this concept, Edwaptum or Otuwaisiin, in which the intent was in which people will be constantly invoking their Tuwais and look at everything from multiple perspectives or other perspectives, as to see every action that we do on a daily basis, not so much to question the integrity of it, but rather how can we constantly improve or fine-tune some of our actions so that they will not be so harmful to the very source of life in which we all depend upon. So 2IC, I believe, is something that we had hoped that could be something that could be used as a kind of a transformation change we need. Because for me, I see everything from my Aboriginal lens. I hear everything from my Aboriginal understanding. And since now I have to coexist with others, I now have this prerogative to invoke the other lens and see what I can learn from others of what their perspectives are, not only to give me a better opportunity so that I can meet the challenges what the future may throw at us, but also I can be just as much instrumental of being that arm of healing and sort of ignore that the other arm of destruction. So 2IC then, I believe, to me, I believe should be seen as a fundamental principle of how we go about living while we are here in this physical plane. And 2IC, and of course, to me, I think it's essentially in which we have to somehow ensure that, well, this is how I put it, central to 2IC is the notion that knowledge will transform the holder and that the holder bears responsibility to act on that knowledge. So, simply put, as I understand it, is 2IC then has to be very action-oriented, in which, to the best of our human abilities, constantly try to create alternatives that may not be as destructive as the main one, as the main part, and for us to come together and use those alternatives, so that not only this generation will have an opportunity to exist, but also the future generations also will have the same opportunities as we have, and hopefully better than what we came up with.
Definitely, absolutely. So I guess, so what you're saying is kind of two-eyed seeing, you'd like to see two-eyed seeing used in actuality in a very practical sense, right? In real life. You'd kind of like to see like science paired with your sustainability values and background and your Indigenous perspective, right?
Yes.
Do you know of any projects where you've kind of seen that happening?
Well, here, for example, here in Cape Breton, we have an organization called UINR, Unamagi Institute of Natural Resources. And we have another organization called CEPI, Collaborative Environmental Planning Initiative, in which the main intent of those is to engage the governments, the federal government, the provincial government, the municipal government, the First Nations government, the institutions, learning institutions, and the industry, as to how can we embrace this idea of working together, of trying to be a better stewards and take care of this body of water which we call the Bador Lakes, which has been the lifeline for our people for many, many, many generations, as well as for the newcomers. And because of these land use activities, the Bador Lakes has suffered very greatly, because Bador Lakes is a very unique system. it does not have the flushing out privileges like any harbor or any ordinary inlet. I understand through science it takes 42 years before a complete cycle is complete. Therefore, the salinity is lower, temperature is higher, which really created just a perfect environment for some of those species, 25 different some odd species years ago, that used to come into our lakes to spawn and to raise their young. But because of certain type of land activity, especially farming, in which a lot of these toxins and poisons have been pumped into it, the Bador Lakes was dying. It has not reached a point of complete recovery yet, but at least now a lot of these issues are addressed collectively from the highest level to the ground level as to how can we work together to ensure that every action will be taken in which we will integrate. We will make sure that Western sciences and the Aboriginal ways of knowing will work together for the common objective or common cause, because we're not questioning the integrity of the science, but unfortunately, science cannot see nature as a subject. Science could only see nature as an object. So when you integrate those two ways of knowing, people then begin to feel and to say things and to think differently about the lakes. Lake is not an object; it's a subject. Therefore, it needs our care, our compassion, and love and appreciation. And once those things are part and parcel of our daily activities, I don't know, I don't have the degrees, but I believe, but I'm sure the rate of destruction has somehow lessened or decreased, because people now see this body of water from a different perspective, not something that's only looked upon as a commodity, but something that is very much alive, and that's something in which we all so depend upon, because it kept generating the kind of a biodiversity required, so the environment would be the kind of environment would be able to sustain people that live around the shores of these bodies of water. That's just one aspect of it. The other aspect, of course, is that eventually that was taken into the higher learning, and in that higher learning, we managed to develop a course called Integrative Science Program, in which he did exactly that, by integrating Western science and the Aboriginal ways of knowing into the curriculum, in which the students that went there, yes, they can use the science to tell them a lot of things about our natural world. And of course, when you integrate Aboriginal ways of knowing, you not only understand and the makeup of any of these species, but you also are taught the purpose of these species within the whole system. And it reminds you on a daily basis, if we continuously to eradicate any one of these species, what will be the ecological repercussions? And there has to be some ecological repercussions because of this in-depth interconnectivity, interdependency with nature. Every part of nature has a purpose. And once those purposes are no longer there or removed, there has to be some kind of a repercussion. There's some kind of in which she cannot function to the fullest because there's something missing. So this kind of a mindset, in conjunction with Western science, I believe we have not succeeded, but we have somehow managed not just to change the different mindset or perspectives, but also to be able to create alternatives to some of the way things were done in the past. We're nowhere near where we should be, but at least we're now at the beginning, or at least in the early stages of integrating another perspective as to what nature is and what our responsibilities are. Because I don't think it'd be too difficult to understand and see that it's the Aboriginal people that have been very, very aggressively trying to live up to their inherent responsibilities, judging by the different protests that have happened across this country when they see such a high degree of an abuse, whether it's water, air, or soil. They just have to go out there and try to stop it, or try to create an alternative. Because do we really want to know when we'll reach the point of no return? Because
No.
if we get to that point, I think it's too late.
Definitely.
Let's not wait until we are convinced we have reached the point of no return. Let's do something now. Let's embrace this concept of 2I seeing. Let's embrace some of these Aboriginal concepts in which people are very much concerned and committed what their responsibilities are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing. I really think it's important that we do kind of see like a lake as so much more than just a lake. Like our lakes aren't replaceable. You can't replace, like a whole lake, because a lake is more than the water. It's everything it's connected to. It's the watershed. It's the species in it, the alga blooms and the plants surrounding it. Everything is connected to it, and you can't just replace that. That's really good to say. Thank you.
But the other thing too, Peter, is that I believe I don't think we have the luxury to wait too much longer. We know what the problems are, and I don't think we have the luxury to keep discussing them. I think it's about time that we start talking about some action items, some actions that needs to be taken right now. For example, air, water, and soil. Those two elements, webs of life, do not have protection. Why can't we join our hands together with the native people and tell the policymakers, water, air, and soil, it's an essential web of life for all life. Therefore, it should have some protection. And ideally, at this juncture, I think, if we can somehow move it into the Charter of Human Rights, in which that would be protected as a web and a source of life for all living things, instead of allowing the companies to use that to their own advantages.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing I believe that we can do without too much effort, providing we can agree to come together as one and create that declaration to the governments that water, air, and soil is essential for all life forms. Therefore, it has to be protected under some charter.
Mm-hmm. I think we're nearing the end of this segment, but we're gonna have to come back for questions too. But I think we need to move on to our next speaker. I think I'd like to bring up Maureen. Unless you have any final one or two final lines to say. Oh no, I'll let Maureen introduce our next speaker.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you so much, Albert, for the inspiring message. And I love that lesson about coming together as one. it's just more powerful to bring in all these different knowledge systems to be able to address all these different questions and relationships moving forward. And I know, I'm not sure what it's like in the East Coast, but I know in BC particularly, it's becoming a lot more evident of this two-eyed seeing concept and the ways we are working with other groups and in school curriculum and research and understanding. And so it's definitely an important theme moving forward that hopefully more and more people will begin to adopt. But yeah, thank you, Albert. We're gonna have you still on and then come back to questions, because I'm sure there's lots of groups that would love to ask you specifically some questions about your experiences and different things. And so I'm just gonna put you off for now. But yeah, I'm gonna introduce our next. So we're very fortunate to have two guest speakers today. And so our next guest speaker is a citizen from the Nisga'a Nation. She recently moved to Vancouver to start a new role as assistant professor of Indigenous Fisheries at the University of British Columbia's Institute of Oceans and Fisheries. She's also the principal investigator at UBC's new Center for Indigenous Fisheries. And her research has used cross-cultural approaches to understand complex questions and relationships. And so today we are very fortunate to have our special guest, who's also a National Geographic explorer, a fellow of the Explorers Club, and a co-founder of Raiperia, which is a charity that brings diverse groups of women to understand science on the water. And so I'd like to give a warm welcome to Dr. Andrea Jane Reid.
Thank you, Maureen. Really nice to be here with you.
Oops, sorry. Sorry, I'm having a little technical difficulties. There we go. There we go.
Great. You can see me and hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Great to be here with you, and thanks for the introduction and bio. I mean, I would say first and foremost, I am simply a learner and have so enjoyed over the past years getting to learn from folks like Albert. And it's just such a pleasure to hear him. I mean, he's a fountain of wisdom, and I could listen to him all day. So thank you, Albert, for those words. I'm going to share a short presentation with you all. So I'm going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second here while I do that. Great. Maureen, could you confirm that you can see my slide?
Okay. Oops, 1 second. Let me try to. Oh, there we go. Yep.
All set? Okay, thanks so much. So yeah, it's my absolute pleasure to be here with all of you, and I really appreciate you hosting, Peter and Maureen, and thanks to all the teachers and students and folks at home that are joining in. I'm really glad that I can be part of this conversation, which I really think is part of a larger movement to build understanding and relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in the land we now call Canada, but around the world as well. So I'd like to start today by saying meet, Amwilla Willana, hello, how are you, in the Nisga'a language. I only know little bits and pieces of Nisga'a. I'm very far from fluent because I didn't grow up with this part of my culture and my language, but I'm working hard now to learn what I can. So I'll share a few Nisga'a words throughout this talk as I tell you a little bit about myself and my own journey. And then after that, I'll be happy to answer a few questions alongside Albert. So the first thing I want to share is that I come from two places. On my dad's side, we're from northern British Columbia, and on my mom's side, we're from Prince Edward Island. And I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about BC first. This is my Gigi, my grandmother's village, Gingol, which is way up in northern BC, just at the base of the Alaska Panhandle. So those mountains you can see in the background, that's the base of the Alaska Panhandle. And this is just a beautiful small Nisga'a village where my grandmother was born. She belonged to the Giskask or killer whale clan and belonged to a really big family. So I still have lots of aunties and cousins who call Gingolth and the Nisga'a Nation home. But my Gigi didn't get to stay in the community and in the culture for long. And she was taken at a young age from northern BC all the way to the south, just outside of Vancouver, to attend residential school like so many other kids at the time. And my dad was born in southern BC and didn't grow up in the Niska Nation because he was part of something called the 60s Scoop, where Indigenous children were being adopted by non-Indigenous families. So he grew up without really knowing who he is and where he comes from, which is part of the reason that I grew up way over here on Prince Edward Island, where my mom is from. So I grew up on the ocean, on PEI, which is also known in the Mi'kmaq language as Ebigwit, meaning lying on the water, which is exactly how I grew up. And just being on the beach, that was just something I loved so much. This is me in front of my favorite lighthouse just down the road from where I grew up, and I loved being on and in the water from the very start. And so the second thing that I want to share with you today is that I see the world really in two ways, like Albert was describing. After I grew up on PEI, I went off to university, like so many do, and I wanted to learn everything I could about water and fish as soon as I learned that I could make them my focus. I wanted to become a scientist to protect our oceans, our rivers, our lakes, our streams. So I started doing scientific research that involved scuba diving, where I got to swim underwater for long stretches of time, counting fish, identifying different species of fish, finding out where they live and how healthy they are. I got to work on beautiful ocean coral reefs like you see here, and also got to work in freshwater lakes and wetlands, searching for fish that were really, really big, like this monster fish in Uganda called the Nile perch, and also little fish like this that were really small. These are haplochromine cichlids that the Nile perch love to eat. And I got to work with fishers from around the world, learning directly from people who know the fish the very best. And as Maureen mentioned, I was doing much of this work in partnership with the National Geographic Society, and I was learning to become a trained scientist and explorer. But at the same time, I was starting to recognize that there are people who understand and know the fish in a whole different way than traditional science, and there's so much that we can learn from them. I was working with fishers who could tell me when, where, and how to find all different kinds of fish, when it was going to rain. They could read the world like a book. And this started to cause a really big shift for me in how I was thinking about the world. Being a scientist didn't need to mean wearing a lab coat or always having to dissect the world around us to understand it. There are other ways that scientists can look, that people can become experts like Albert simply by how they live in the world. He doesn't need to go to university to know the land around him. He already does. They can carry knowledge passed down from one generation to the next, often living in relationship with the fish and the water, and can come to be scientists without a university credential. And I think it's a really important message that we really take away from this, that it doesn't need to be either or. And in this work, I'm just really trying to think about how we can bring the knowledge and tools from both ways of knowing to come to the aid of our lands and waters that are really in need of our help. And as Albert introduced, this is this idea of Etoweptimuk, and I've had just an enormous privilege getting to learn directly from Albert. And it turns out that there are many Indigenous nations from Canada, from inside Canada, to the United States, to Australia, to New Zealand, that have similar kinds of conceptual frameworks for bringing together ways of knowing, things akin to two-eyed seeing, but they just might call it something different. And so a big question here is what this actually looks like in practice. So I'm just going to quickly tell you a little bit about my work to give you a better idea. So a lot of my work centers on Pacific salmon, or Han in Niska, and salmon move between lakes and rivers into the ocean over their life cycle and then go back again. So to track their massive migrations, I use this really cool scientific technology called radio telemetry, where I take radio tags like this, about the size of a battery, and I put them inside the bellies of fish that I catch. And then we release them and use radio antennas, just like your parents might have on their car, to listen to the fish, kind of like a fish radio. But this only tells me where the fish go. It doesn't allow me to recapture the fish and see how the fish are actually doing. So you know how you go and see a doctor every once in a while for a checkup? You probably go once every year. Well, it's the same kind of thing, except it's me who's the doctor and the fish are the patients. And so to recapture the fish, to see how they're doing, to give them that checkup, we use this traditional fishing technology called fish wheels. This is a Niska fish wheel that is powered by the river's current, and it can be used to recapture fish and monitor them, allowing us to do those health checks I just mentioned. So it's really about bringing together both ways of monitoring fish together, that I can get a better understanding of how they're doing and where they're going. And it's kind of like looking through glasses or binoculars. So if you're only looking through one lens, it looks really different than when you're fully looking through both. So this is something that I now practice in all of my work. I learn from both professors and elders in tandem. And I really endeavor to teach through both lenses. When I work with youth in my nation, I lead salmon science camps for Niska youth that I love. It's a highlight of my year. And I'm also a co-founder of a charity called Riperia that connects young women with science on the water, where we lead multi-day canoe camping trips, and they can learn all the fundamentals of freshwater science through both an Indigenous knowledge and Western scientific lens. And these are very much the teachings and practices that I'll be carrying with me in this new Center for Indigenous Fisheries here at UBC. And so kind of the last thing I want to note, I just want to wrap up by sharing what Albert has already said, that it's just so critical that we think about action and doing something, that we can all be water and fish and land protectors, and it's really never too early to start. This is Autumn Peltier, who's a teenager now, but she started being a water protector at the age of 8, and she's now spoken to the Prime Minister, to the United Nations. She's written to the Queen about our need to protect our waters and to work together to the best of our collective ability to do something now. So with that, I'll leave you with these two last Niska words, Tuyuk Sinisam. Thank you all for your time and attention. And I'll just stop sharing my screen. There we go.
Oh, thank you, Andrea. It's so great to see how you've implemented Tuaitsini into the research and work that you're doing, and hopefully we can inspire the youth out there to just take a different perspective on the way we approach things and learn about the world around us and how we navigate through all of this. And so, thank you very much for sharing the beautiful presentation on your work and your life. Peter, do you have any words for Andrea before we launch off question and answer period?
Yeah, just thank you so much for sharing everything about kind of what it can look like to be a scientist, and how it's not really just about being in a lab coat all the time and going to university and doing that kind of route. And there's so much more in science that can be explored and should be explored and can benefit all of us too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an important conversation to be having, because we talk about scientists often in a really glorified way, and we need to think about who scientists are. In my view, Albert is a bona fide scientist, and we should see him that way too.
Yeah, sure. And so, I wanna leave plenty of room for everybody else to interact with our guests today. And so I'm gonna open up the floor to questions. I'm gonna first open up to our live classrooms right now. I'm gonna bring Albert back in here. And I think Pearson College, you guys have a question? I'm just gonna add you guys on right here. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Go for it.
Can y'all hear me? Okay, fantastic. So my name is Viggo. I'm from Finland. And Albert and Andrea, you were both just now calling to action. And you were also talking about fisheries management. And here at Pearson College, we steward a marine reserve called Race Rocks. It's a collection of islands off the coast a bit. And it's on the territory of the Coast Salish people. And what I'm wondering, hearing this talk, is how can we as international students here at Pearson College work with this place in an effort of reconciliation and conservation?
Well, let me make an attempt. and I'm sure Maureen can do Andrea can do the rest. We're referring to something that does not recognize boundaries or jurisdictions. Part of this action that's going to be required, there's got to be some effort put forth of somehow getting the world of embracing the spirit of collaboration, the spirit of co-learning, because a lot of these species are migratory species, and if we cannot get the global communities to come into some kind of a similar mindset of how essential it is for our own very survival of ensuring that these species will always be there, not just for this generation, but for many generations to come. That's one area that I believe that should be our number one priority among many other things that has to be done locally, because we can do everything, we can articulate, we can come up with something that is so effective, that would be so effective and beneficial for those species that might be in our that might be in our jurisdiction areas. But if they are not protected if there's no protection for them on the outside, I think the task is going to be much more difficult. Now, I don't know really how that can be done, but I think it's something we should at least make an attempt as to how can we get this dialogue going. I hope Andrea can add something.
Yeah, I think Albert's right, and I think that the severity of the problems that we're now facing in our fisheries and for biodiversity at large, it requires kind of everyone to play a role, and there's so much work to be done that we need kind of all the hands on deck that we can get and all the fish, land, and water protectors we can. But fundamentally, I think so much of this work is about relationships, and so it's really about situating yourself in the place that you are, and with those potential community partners, it's about having a conversation to find out what those local needs are and how you can play a role. There's not all, it depends on the context, but those are important conversations to have, to see if there are ways that Pearson College can play a support.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think because we are all linked to these waters, having this transboundary relationship is very important, because it's a matter of ensuring that throughout the coast and throughout the world, all these connections can be made to ensure the resiliency of the wildlife and habitats in them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think salmon are the perfect example of how little borders matter. They travel all over across multiple territories of Indigenous nations between the US and Canada. They're very transboundary.
Awesome, great question. Thank you. So I'm gonna go to, let's see, Ms. Sherwood, do you guys have a question?
My question is, how has the pandemic affected your work? How has the pandemic affected your work?
How has the pandemic affected your work?
Good question. Okay, Andrea or Albert?
Albert, would you like to answer first?
I don't believe at this juncture this pandemic has affected. As a matter of fact, it has been, I see it as something much more advantageous, much more effective, because with virtual, you can expand your audiences, in which in some days We can talk to our brothers and sisters on New Zealand, and our brothers and sisters in Germany, and our brothers and sisters in West Coast. And normally that would be impossible. So I believe we should optimize this as an opportunity to expand, and hopefully we will be able to amplify our voices here in this hemisphere, in which they will somehow at the same time be resonating globally. Yes, that's the advantage I believe I see of what COVID has brought us into. Because normally, if this was in person, of course, your audiences are very limited, and the scope of the message is also going to be limited. But now it could be heard in so many different times, so many different countries, with the message that yes, we may be doing very small part here in our geographical area, but at least now we know there is a level of comfort in which other people are doing a similar thing in other parts of the world, which is very, very encouraging, which was never possible before. So that's my personal opinion on this. Maybe somebody else can add more to it.
I can definitely attest to the fact that Albert is using this opportunity to engage as much as he can and as widely as he can. Every meeting that I join, I find Albert is connected to it somehow. And I was recently looking at the upcoming ACES conference, the American Indian Society of Engineering and Science. And Albert is the keynote. He's just everywhere I go. And I think he's rivaling Jane Goodall. She travels, I think, 320 days pre-COVID for engagements. And I think he's going 365 during COVID, traveling virtually everywhere he goes. But for me, I find the biggest impact, the biggest negative impact, because I think there are all these positives of virtual connection and the ability to reach these bigger audiences. But what's tricky is the ability to work well with communities. We really need to take the time now for many Indigenous communities in this country, COVID has created a very dire situation, and we need to make sure that those communities are protected. So in a lot of my research that's community-centered, we now have to do everything virtually, and you can't connect in the same way as we used to be able to. So that's one challenge, but we're working with it. It's not insurmountable, as Albert makes clear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that definitely is a challenge, not being able to connect physically with different people, and also like in nature as well. That's what I have found challenging in the work that we are doing. But one pro from all this virtual learning I've found is that we are able to bring in people from all over the world. And so people that generally we wouldn't have been able to engage with our programs, we're able to reach now with virtual programs. So that's one little advantage. But yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go to Claremont for a question. Do you guys have a question?
You can see yourself.
Hi.
Hi.
My name is Anya. I'm in grade 11 at Claremont. And my question was, what do you think is the best way to reach very closed-minded and closed-off people in order to introduce TI?
Ooh, good question. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna open that up to Albert and Andrea. So yeah, how would you try to approach people who maybe are not as open to the concept?
I didn't quite hear I couldn't quite hear the question.
So the question was, how would you, I'm going to rephrase it, but how would you basically try to introduce the 2i concept to people who might not be as attuned to it or open to it as others?
I'll let Andrea while I gather my thoughts on that one.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's something that I definitely think about a fair bit. Fortunately, I think that a lot of people are really interested in it, and most that I engage with are very supportive and want to see more space created for Indigenous knowledge systems and do see them as equally valid. I think we have a long history in our academic systems of discounting Indigenous knowledge as valid, and we have so much catching up to do, as Albert made clear, to change our education systems and to show that Indigenous knowledge has a rightful place in it. But for me, I think in conversations that I've had that are more difficult, I think what's really critical is to take the time to listen and to actually have a discussion about these things. A few conversations I've had that have been really challenging ones, I've actually been able to talk it through, and it's been really productive. And now these are people who I now think of as allies in this space. And so I think being open to listening and not just shutting people out for potentially, maybe there's a lack of understanding about what Indigenous knowledge is or why it has a rightful place in the classroom. So giving them the benefit of the doubt and taking the time to engage is important. But I'll let Albert share more wisdom on that than me.
Well, I think what I believe anyway, not just because I'm a native, but if I was a very inquisitive individual, and I somehow know for sure that there has been this group of people living in a certain part of this world, like Canada, for 18 or 20,000 years. And within that period, there was never any indication that they have actually compromised the ecological integrity of the area. That they have not once compromised their very source of life by collectively, through generations, agreeing to always be mindful that no action of theirs will ever be construed as compromising the ecological integrity of the area. Not only for the sake of the present generation, but for many generations to come. So I believe with that idea, then I think there has to be some lessons in which we can extract and apply them to our modern context, in which it will give us a better opportunities or better ways of knowing how to better mine or take care of the very essence of life in which we all depend upon, rather than be constantly being caught into this web of complacency, because complacency will lead us into hopelessness. But by being able to invoke other perspectives, I believe it will somehow reawaken the spirit of curiosity that's all in us. Because with this energy of curiosity, then we can always engage or try to look at something from another perspective, in which it will be much more beneficial and effective, not just for you as an individual, but for others as well. So this is what I like to stress, that indigenous knowledges, I believe, should be seen as something in which there has to have a lot of lessons in which we can learn from, the way in which they manage to coexist in balance and harmony for so long, without at any point in time they were at a point in which their ecological integrity was compromised, or the cleansing capacity of the system was compromised. So I think there should be somehow at least given the benefit of the doubt that maybe there could be some advantages if we somehow make an attempt to integrate some of their ways of knowing, as to how can we coexist in a balance of harmony to something that we all so depend upon.
Thank you, Albert. I think that is really important, this idea of curiosity, and I think, yeah, to address the question, just to be open and start those conversations. And by being open, there's so much opportunity to learn new things. Whereas if you close yourself off to opinions or ideas, there's a lot that could be missed. So yeah, some really important ideas in there. But yeah, I think we are wrapping up. I'm just looking at the time. But I want to thank you very much again, our guests, Andrea and Albert, for joining us and sharing your wisdom and knowledge and inspiring words. And I just want to give you one big thank you for joining us today. And do you have any final words of wisdom for everyone? I know you guys have shared so much words of wisdom already, but I'll leave you with any final words that you want to say with everyone.
I think what I will share as a final thing is that how we look upon knowledge. Knowledge, of course, will transform us. And we believe that we have a big responsibility of sharing that knowledge. So anytime we have been given the opportunity of sharing that knowledge, actually what we are doing is really knowledge gardening. We're planting this knowledge in which some other individual or other groups will take it up to another notch to make it much more effective for the benefit of all. So this idea then, knowledge is alive. And I believe each and every one of us could be looked upon as a knowledge gardener. Because every knowledge we share is from our own perspectives, from our hearts. And that has been something that has been given to us or inherent in us, in which we have a responsibility of sharing.
I'll just quickly add that something that I find a big parallel to a lot of what Albert shares are some words from Richard Wagamese, where he says, "Knowledge is not wisdom, but wisdom is knowledge in action." I've lived most of my years immersed in the culture of books. I command a lot of facts. I comprehend a lot of concepts. That does not make me wise or even intelligent. It just indicates what I've memorized. But when I activate those facts and concepts to find the greatest, grandest version of myself, and then use them to work towards that version, I begin the process of wisdom. The most essential question to ask myself is not what do I think about this, but rather how do I feel about this? In such simplicity is greatness made possible for an individual, a society, and a human family. So I'll just leave it at that. But I want to thank Albert for sharing your time. It's so nice to see you as always. And thank you, Peter and Maureen, for being our gracious hosts.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's so good to have you both here and to hear from both of you. And there's a lot of great comments on everything you said, and to have you both here. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure.
And I too would like to express my appreciation. Thank you for allowing me to be part of your initiative here. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, Maureen, I think you're on mute.
Oops. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. It's been such a privilege learning from both of you today, and I'm sure everyone else enjoyed it as well. But yeah, so I'm just gonna wrap up with some final things. So as Andrea mentioned and Albert mentioned, I mean, you can never be too young to start a movement or create action. And so I'm gonna share our screen. So with Raincoast, we launched a student challenge for everybody watching out there, all the schools, all the classrooms. And so if you have a project that you want to share with us by the end of the year, we'd love to be able to showcase that and share that with others. And so we're gonna create a platform for projects that people can share to teach others and share what they've done in their community. And so it could be something like a video, a presentation, or creative expression, maybe an art or photography or poem that you've created. And we want to provide a platform for you guys to share that with others. And so connect with myself or Raincoast, and we can help share those projects by the end of the year with an event. So you can email me at maureen@raincoast.org, and I can help support that and set that up. But yeah, we'd love to see the inspiring things that youth are doing out there in the community. It's never too early to start, and we know the capabilities of some of the amazing youth out there. So just to complete our presentation today, for next episode, so this was a spotlight session where we had some really great guest speakers. So our next episode will be a lesson, and we're going to be chatting about Pacific salmon and its role as a keystone species here on the coast of British Columbia. Such an important species. So it's a big topic, and we'll be delving into that in our next episode. Yeah, Peter, anything else?
No, I'm truly looking forward to next time. I think we've got to do a bit of a shout out to everyone that sponsored this program so far. Thank you so much to our sponsors for making this possible and getting us all across BC and across the world.
Awesome. Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining for our second episode. Hopefully you join again for our next one. But I thank all of our classrooms and all of our guests again. And see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Haikwa.